Yes, is this loud enough? Yeah, right. I'm Chris Cottrell, I work at Deutsche Welle. I'm an online editor. There are several of us. I work in the business department, and I'm going to tell you about how we are trying to make business shareable and social media friendly. It's admittedly a Herculean task, but we're trying, and we've had some success, and I'm going to tell you about it. I'll just give you some background about me. Before I became an online editor in the business department, I worked for the New York Times for 2 years in Berlin as a reporting assistant for their correspondence. I interned before that at Reuters and Spiegel and CNN, and I do still do some work for Spiegel. So I studied print journalism in Washington, D.C. I find it kind of amusing. I think I was one of the last classes that actually discerned between print journalism and broadcast journalism. No one was talking about native storytelling on social media at the time. I didn't have a Facebook account until I graduated. But now I work for an international broadcaster with deep roots in radio and TV. And we are in the midst of this push to make us more. Well, and this is a social media push. We didn't ignore it for a long time, but the timing of this invitation was actually really timely, because we're really putting all our weight behind our social media accounts. We're creating reporting positions, Twitter and Facebook, but I will get into that. So when I'm not reading, or when I'm not writing the news, I'm usually reading it. I do most of that on Twitter. It's replaced my RSS feeds. We still get a lot of our news from sort of traditional outlets at Deutsche Welle, and we read the wires, Associated Press, and Reuters. We sort of rely on them for breaking news. But we are getting, and then we have like correspondents around the world that sort of feed us information from their regions, their countries. But more and more, that is also coming from social media, from Twitter especially. I probably come in the morning with 1 to 2 story ideas that I caught on Twitter. The breaking news, like I said, is probably more from the wires. Out of the box stuff, features, things that just the more colorful stories, the ones that the wires maybe missed, probably getting from. So, yeah, I called my presentation New Media at an Old Broadcaster. The reason was because I had to actually come up with a different title, but it was too complicated. It didn't lend itself to translations. But I think it's appropriate actually, because so Deutsche Welle, I know you're familiar with it, but it's a huge organization. We cover a lot of ground. We cast a really wide net. So at the moment it's tri-medial. It's about to be, I guess, quadrimedial, if that's a word. We have 2 main offices. TV is based in Berlin. There's thousands of people working there, and then the other big place is in Bonn. That's where online is based. And it's where radio used to be based. So we have radio, now it's sort of been replaced by podcasts that are disseminated online, TV, online, obviously our website, www.com, and the fourth that we're really putting our weight behind now is social media, creating content for social media that we really only disseminate on social media. It's more than just taking videos that we create, or TV reports, and throwing them online and just recycling them. And it's much more going out, sort of selecting a few topics that we can do really well that day, and then sort of going deep, and then really only publishing that on social media, whether it's live via Periscope, whether it's tweet after tweet after tweet, whether it's an interview with someone that we create a really short, snappy video, nice pictures that we then put out on Facebook. It wasn't, like I said, Deutsche Welle is a huge organization. And like any huge, somewhat bureaucratic organization, it's not always, change is not always immediate. That said, we do a really great job on TV and radio. As I sort of talked about before, we had, we're not late, we're a little late to the game, but we have some really good ideas. So it just wasn't always easy to push these changes through, but I think this is such a fundamental shift, everybody's sort of seeing the writing on the wall, and everybody's on board. Where I work, I just want to tell you a little bit about sort of our coverage. It will be relevant to this, because it's changing because of thanks to our followers on Twitter and Facebook, and not just this is just our English Twitter page. We have online 30 different languages. Many of them have social media. We're contemplating a third social media account. Instagram is in the running. I hope it's not Snapchat, because Snapchat just gives me anxiety. So what's changing? So we cover, there's sort of three realms that we operate in. We cover international news, and that's everything from like industrial figures from China, South African mining, monetary policy in the U.S., right? Dry stuff. Then we cover Europe, the Eurozone, and Germany. And those last two are the ones that we really do our best work in. That's where we have the most knowledge. And it's also, as we've learned, what our readers want most from us. So we definitely had to first identify who our audience was. And believe it or not, we knew where the clicks were coming from. We knew roughly how many millions of people were watching Deutsche Welle. Even those numbers are kind of, they're just tough to nail down. But we have a department at Deutsche Welle that we asked, we said, we need to know who shared our stories, we need to know what they want to read, we need to know who they are, what they earn, what they care about. And they found out. Don't ask me how, but they did. They're really good. They probably put out like a questionnaire. So what we found out was that they're mostly affluent, our readers. They're mostly Western. They're entrepreneurs. They're engineers. Thank you. So they're entrepreneurs, they're engineers, they work in PR and media. They like brand names. They're overwhelmingly wealthier, prosperous, I guess. And they come to us to get business news from Europe's largest economy, told from the sort of German and European perspective. That's our mandate. It also happens to be our mandate, but that's also what they come to. And I don't know if this is true for all of you in the audience. If not, please tell me and I'll make a note of it. And so what they wanted to read about, like what the stories that got sort of the most play on social media, that were clicked the most, that were shared, they were opinionated, they showed personality. They were about new companies, young entrepreneurs, sort of really personal stories. Because like I said, we're trying to make business, we're trying to make industrial figures interesting. Not easy. But not impossible. Actually, industrial figures is pretty impossible. But you can make like, founding a business, that can be cool. Industrial figures is all and so knowing what they wanted from us, it helped us to change, and it's actually helping us. This is an ongoing process. We probably started this push about 6 months ago in the business world. Right? We started like thinking about it. People started shouting, and eventually they were heard, and enough people shouted. We got critical mass. Like, hey, we need to turn the bot off and actually have somebody tweet. And so knowing what they wanted from us actually did help us. It is helping us change our coverage. Because it's always that, for us sitting here, at least for us, it's always this balancing act, right? You want to know, the two questions we sort of ask ourselves in the editorial meeting in the morning is, will people find this interesting? Should they find it interesting? There are things that are arguably so important that it's our duty to inform and to package it in a way that people will then read. And it's not some cynical motivation, we don't just want the clicks. We also right, so we know that some stories do better than others, and social media definitely helped us realize that, because it helped us sort of measure this shareable factor of the stories we were doing. And that's not to say we're not going to do, and I just talked about what stories they're coming to us for. That doesn't mean we're not going to do a story about, say, Daimler. We just need to find a way that we can, like, tell it on Twitter or on Facebook that people will share. And I have a few examples here of tweets that did, this is just from the last month, that did really well. We had one on Panama Papers. It's that one, yeah. There's no sound, but basically he's basically going to town on letterbox companies, saying that they're immoral and it's not objective, really, although it's true. And that one got 180 retweets. And that's one of our producers who booked himself on the show. This other one is with the director of Greenpeace EU. This was back when I don't remember who leaked the information, but it came out that the US had been pressuring the EU in the negotiations over TTIP. I mean, so these are really topics that everyone's already reading about them, talking about them, and we're sort of piggybacking on it, right? We recognize that we are a small fish in a big pond. In a lot of markets, not every market. Some markets we're big fish. But that doesn't mean that we can't still offer something. We still try to indeed. And because, I mean, we do have unique selling points. Everybody does. It just is a matter of figuring out what it is. And we know that there are things that we can do that nobody else can. We have specialties. We have like areas of specialization. Brexit. Brexit, for instance, it's really close to home for us. We have a ton of British people working for us. It's going to affect, it's close to home here too, obviously, but so we're really pushing that one really hard. VW, Dieselgate. We were all over Dieselgate. It was also a really good story. Germany's Europe's largest automaker caught cheating. That was a fun one to do. So, right, we're just looking for this added value that we can offer to the story that's going to make it. Going forward, there were a couple rules that we set for ourselves. There's no more recycling. There's no more just like clipping something out of the show and just like throwing it on Twitter. Although that's actually what we did with Lars's interview into really we might do a little bit more of that. And then no more doing it on the side. We need a department. We have a social media department for news and for business. We're going to have reporters. We just hired 2 editors that'll always be at their desks, right? Before that, it was actually me, it was my colleagues, it was the editors who were like sort of doing social media or like tweeting and posting to Facebook when we had time, pretty much, which is but that's changing, and I will actually go, if you're interested, I will actually go into sort of what the day is going to look like and how it's going to work for us. the idea, we'll start with the morning conference. The editors will come in. They'll tell us what stories they think will do best, which stories they like us to cover, and then we will either cover these stories and we will cover them in a way. I mean, we're going to still have the website, the online writers will be doing it for the website, but they will also be sort of creating content for our social media pages. And in the future we'll have our own reporters that actually go out like with an iPhone and do their interviews live, record them and immediately put them up on Twitter and don't actually create anything for the website. Before I came to Montenegro, I'm actually shortly after I got the invitation, I talked with my boss. And he said, tell them, look, we're tri-media, we've got TV, radio, online, but in the future, we've got this great, sexy app that we're really proud of, it's doing really well. In the future, we're looking past the app. Like 6 months ago, it was all about the app. Everybody's on their smartphones, this is where we need to be. Now looking forward, forget the app, we have to be forward thinking, it's all going to be totally. We're going to just create content. TV being this sort of linear media that it is just not conducive to the news consumption habits of today. I mean, people want their news when they want it. They want it at the bus stop. They want it on demand. So they're thinking, trying to think ahead. It's not to say Deutsche Welle is going to shut down TV stations. But we'll sort of reconvene in 6 months, and social media will probably be entirely different by then, and we'll have to come up with a ton of different such is life. Right, so we're going to have our reporters, we're going to piggyback on these, we're going to be setting our own agenda, but also piggybacking on sort of the big news of the day. There are some interesting tools, actually. I don't know if you guys are, so when I was doing research for this presentation, I went and I asked our editors, social media editors, like, how do you guys actually work? And they gave me some really interesting pointers. It's actually useful for a humble tweeter like myself, or for newsrooms, for editors. If you guys would like it, I'm happy to share them with you. And since probably only like 15 minutes into my presentation anyway, I'm not going to make it to 45, sorry. But I will happily fill it with some useful tips and tricks. There's a 30-second, so the first one that I thought was really cool. There's a 30-second limit on videos on Twitter, which is really frustrating if you're trying to get information across. It takes more than 30 seconds. But if you add a credit card, you don't have to buy anything. Just add the credit card. The limit.
Stavite broj svoje kreditne kartice.
At least 6 minutes. It's much longer.
Limit vam je onda 6 minuta. Dakle, ne morate ništa da platite.
Like I said, you don't have to spend any money. And that gives you then it gives you access to Twitter ads, which gives you this really cool service, I guess we call it. And it predicts what the news is going to be, like what sort of topics, to say news, what the issues are that day that are going to be tweeted about that day, and then sort of in the coming days, like what sort of predictive analytics. And for journalists, that's super interesting for people on social media. And then there's all kinds of neat tools, and I mean, if you guys want to, I don't want to bore you if these tools are not useful for you, but if you want to know about them, I've got a bunch from written down. I'm happy to share them later. We also use a program called Buffer, which lets you like copy and paste links, and it automatically draws the pictures, and you can make those nice, when you see a picture, it's got like the quote on it, and
I onda recimo imate fotografiju, na toj fotografiji automatski imate ispisan link.
And you have no time, which
Koliko
is
ste urednik i
the
ukoliko
nature of being an editor.
nemate puno vremena, što je svojstveno urednicima, takva
So,
olakšica dobro dođe.
let's see. One of the reasons why
Jedan od razloga
looking forward, we think there's so much room for growth on social media. We sort of looked where we get this analytics report once a week. About 44% of our readers just come to the website. They know about it, they come to the website, and they're great. We love them. They're our loyal readers. They're our favorites. 25% come from search engines. Also great. 19 were getting redirected to dw.com and to other sites, other languages, not just English, through Flipboard and Reddit. Also great. Only 8.5% were actually clicking links on our Twitter and Facebook page and then being redirected to us, which is nothing, which is less than a tenth. I mean, so that's where we saw our best growth potential. But in order to grow, we have to be more active.
Moramo da budemo aktivniji, moramo toga da u tom pravcu.
Right, so for us, I mean, the big question is how to tell a story in a way that people will like, as their news consumption habits change, we have to adapt. We're not trying to be the next BuzzFeed, as cool as that would be. But I don't think we have to be. It's not really about trying to be something we're not. But rather sort of identifying who we are, what we can offer, our readers that other people can't. And I mean, it's obviously also about staying relevant in this very disrupted industry that is constantly being disrupted again and again. So we just need to find a way to keep up. Now, that's not to say we can't also be innovative. We're certainly trying to be. But one last thing I did want to show you, though, it was, I think I understand it. I was listening to the translation, and Professor who preceded me was saying, there are people out there who, they're basically just narcissists on social media, and I'm definitely guilty of that a little bit too. I'm a professional journalist, try to be, but I'm definitely guilty of that. And I've never, speaking of things that do well on social media, that sort of lend themselves to social media, the one time that I ever posted anything, that'd be funny if it didn't work. That actually got retweeted more than like a dozen times is this thing. It's just a steering wheel that breaks in half. I got retweeted like 4 million times. So, yeah, that's what's going on in Deutsche Welle. If you guys have questions, and I hope you do, because I was asked to fill 45 minutes, and I really like to. You're nice enough to invite. So if any of you want to know what's going on in Deutsche Welle in the business department, go for it.
Ukoliko želite znate šta se dešava u našem biznis sektoru Deutsche Welle, samo izvolite.
Krise, prvo hvala ti na ovoj veoma zanimljivoj i poučnoj.
We shall probably ask it in English too, right? After?
No.
No? Okay. Thank you.
Prvo hvala na veoma zanimljivoj poučnoj prezentaciji, svemu što smo čuli. Veoma me zanima tvoje lično mišljenje o jednoj definiciji današnjeg novinarstva o kojoj si govorio. Naime, rekao si, ljudi danas žele da pročitaju šta je novo i dok čekaju na autobuskoj stanici. sada. Šta misliš koliko mi sa druge strane kao novinari i urednici upravo zbog te brzine, da li mi gubimo smisao poruke? Da li gubimo kvalitet onog sadržaja do kojeg treba da držimo? Da li su nove tehnologije na neki način ugrozile onu poruku koju mi treba da pronesemo do krajnjeg korisnika, to jest do publike?
Well, there's definitely a danger of that. And I think you're right that in a lot of cases, journalists are at risk of sort of falling into this trap of trying to be the first, not verifying information. I think a lot of them do that, and I think a lot of professionals, really reputable journalists, do that as well. It's an easy trap to fall into. So there's absolutely a danger. I think what is required is, it's vigilance, constant vigilance, reminding yourself not to, because it's getting harder and harder as the pace increases, and it might mean that you sacrifice viewers, readers. But I think that's the cost that we as professional journalists have to bear. It's difficult to verify information. I mean, we have a program on TV, we have a few minutes where the social media desk sort of shows the best, like the relevant tweets of the day. So they're citing where the information came from, says XYZ. This information could not be verified. But even that, even sort of disseminating that information can also be dangerous, even if you sort of acknowledge that it's not coming from a verified source. So yeah, I think it demands constant vigilance and not succumbing to these traps. Thanks for the question, it's a good one. It's one that plagues me and other journalists.
Thank you for useful information. I'm from Belgrade, from the Radio Television Serbia. I would like to know how many people together with journalists work in this department, Deutsche Welle.
In the business department? Let's see, we have the news side, and then we have the magazines. So we've got the Made in Germany Global 3000. I would say about 50. That's probably a high guess, but in both languages, that knows 50. That's a high guess though, it might be 40 to 50. That's just German and English. In the business department, we have 4 languages on TV that are broadcast on TV, 30 on the website. But the business department, and these languages have, some are larger than others. We have Serbian, we have Croatian. We have Urdu, we have any number of 30 languages totally, large or small. But the business department is just German and English. So the coverage, our articles, or content we produce for TV, if it's broadcast or featured on different languages, page, it's just adapted. And we do a lot of that. Sort of a lot of cross cooperation.
Returning in the issue of content. Since you are a business department, what is the impact of public relations of businesses and corporations to this? So how do you deal with that?
The impact of what, sorry?
Public relations.
Public relations?
Of companies and corporations, because today we talk about journalism, journalism and public relations, how it affects the content of media. So what is that in Deutsche Welle?
I don't know anyone who works as an editor. I don't actually, we get press releases just endlessly. We get people who call us as well. We don't work closely with anyone. I mean, it's obviously a danger if you're too close to a public relations officer, right? If they're inviting you to lunch. I've actually never gotten invited to lunch. We go to conferences and breakfasts and lunches, and there is food provided, but they're not picking up the tab. We're not the only ones there. So I don't. We have areas that we cover more due to the interests of our. Well, being a German broadcaster, we cover the auto industry really closely. That said, we're not close to any public relations officers, which is right. We're independent, and we're also independent of the German state. I mean, we're a state-funded broadcaster. We have a mandate to sort of spread the German perspective. But that's where it stops. No one from the top sort of reaches down to our newsroom and tells us like what to do. Even though the money's coming from the government. Oh, really? Well, that's interesting. We should talk more about that later.
Thank you, Chris.
Thank you.
Evo možda ako nema još pitanja mogu ja evo za kraj Chrisovog izlaganja. S obzirom da je Christopher iz Sjedinjenih Američkih Država i da je tamo studirao novinarstvo, možete li nam uporediti američki sistem javnih medija, europski sistem javnog medija u kome radite i šta su karakteristike koje oni u svijetu savremenih medija, nisu više novi nego ovih sadašnjih društvenih medija koje ste pomenuli, koriste?
You know, I'm from the U.S., but I can't remember ever watching Voice of America. I never worked for him. I didn't actually work for any, or I wasn't even, I mean, public media in the U.S., in Germany, for instance, you have the ARD, right? And they're some of the most reputable journalists and some of the best in the country, doing some of the best work. That's not to say that public broadcasters or public journalists in the U.S. are not also doing excellent work. I don't think so. I mean, in the U.S. you have the big names, right? You have the USA Today, you have the New York Times, the Washington Post, as BuzzFeed now. Public broadcasters just don't have the same clout that they have over here. I'm sorry, that's a really, really good question. I'd be curious as to what the answer is too. I'm just afraid I'm not the one who can provide it. That's a really good question. No. I'll Google it. No, please.
Chris, I have one question.
Yeah.
Because it's unquestionable that in people's media repertoire, more people are using social media. But in people's social media repertoire, I think there are some arguments going on, like Twitter is losing its ground, and people are more into like Snapchat or Instagram because they have the visual expressions. So how does Deutsche Welle deal with that? So because are you still mainly focusing on Twitter, or you want to switch to Instagram or Snapchat? That's my question.
That's a good question. It's a good question because you're right, the pace is rapid, right? And which just changes. We're in the midst of this push towards Twitter and Facebook. We're contemplating a third. We know that we need more than just those two, but we're sort of putting most of our efforts into Twitter and Facebook. And it's not to say that we're just sort of closing our eyes and hoping it goes well. I mean, I'm hoping it goes well. I'm hoping Twitter doesn't. I'm hoping their users stop plateauing and will start rising again. Facebook doesn't seem to be going anywhere. But you're absolutely right. We are, so like I said, we have two. We're contemplating a third. And those two are the two names that were mentioned. Instagram and Snapchat. I think there are some people, some organizations that are actually doing really well with Snapchat, news organizations. I hope it's not Snapchat. I hate Snapchat. But if that's what people want, that's fine. It's a constant conversation, right? At the moment, we're focusing on these two because they're the biggest, with the knowledge that it could very well change, and it could very well change very soon. We have a whole department that asks these big questions every day. And then we follow their advice.